Hey, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. I am delighted you're here. Hey, today we're going to talk to Michael Bungay Stanier. Michael is super brilliant. This book, The Coaching Habit, has sold like 40 billion copies, or at least it should, because this is the book that I give to most of my new leaders, because this is the one they need. It says and promises, say less, ask more, change the way you live for. That is true. Now, if you don't know Michael, you're missing out, but you're about to. He's the founder of Box of Crayons. It's a learning and development company that helps organizations transform to advice-driven to curiosity-led. He left Australia 27 years ago to be a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford University, where his only significant achievement was falling in love with a Canadian, which is why he now lives in Toronto, having spent time in London and Boston. He's written a number of books. His last, that's this one here. It's a Wall Street Journal bestseller, The Coaching Habit, sold over legitimately 500,000 copies. And I bet I've given away 100 of them. And he's been praised as one of the few business books that makes people laugh. And it definitely also makes you think and makes you more effective. Now, the new book that's coming out is called The Advice Trap. We're going to probably talk a little bit about that too. That gets published February 2020. Now, balancing out these wonderful moments of success, get this, he was banned from his high school graduation for the balloon incident, was sued by one of his law school lecturers for defamation, and his first published piece of writing was a Harlequin romance stories called The Mail Delivery. Hilarious. Michael Bungay Stanier, my friend, it is so great to see you.
Phil, it is nice to be here. There's no better person to have a conversation with right here, right now. So I'm glad we're here. Thank you for having me.
No, I am too. So this is super exciting. So the first thing, we have to kind of set the premise here because I think folks are going to miss this. What's the difference between coaching and management? And why is coaching so darn important?
Well, look, coaching is a leadership behavior, a leadership competency. So when you have the broader umbrella of managing about how do I make sure that I strike that balance between hitting the targets I need to hit, having the impact you want to have in your work, and growing and leading your people so they become more competent and more confident and more self-sufficient and more autonomous and more brilliant, because you want to leave your people better than you found them, then coaching is one of the skills that you get to use. Now, here's the thing. Way back in the year 2000, Daniel Goleman, who some of you may know as a name, he's the guy who popularized the idea of emotional intelligence. He said, look, there are 6 leadership styles. He wrote a Harvard Business Review article called Leadership That Gets Results. He said, look, 6 styles. Every style has its moment. Every style has its context where it is the best style. Each style has its pros and its cons, its price and its punishment. Its punishment and its prize, I should say. Coaching is one of the 6 leadership styles. And Goleman said, this is the one that is least utilized, even though it's shown to have the most effect on culture, maybe the 3rd most effect on actual direct profitability. So when you weigh up that question around, well, what's the difference between these two and what's management, what's coaching? I'm like, oh, don't separate them. Coaching is a way that you become a fantastic manager, a fantastic leader, a fantastic influencer.
Yeah, that's great. And that's ultimately what we want when we're leaders, right? If we start with that influence, especially, a lot of the folks that I work with are inside sales professionals.
Right.
They really need help creating the right attitudes that create the right behaviors that, to your point, you said the C word that is so important. That's competency, right? They have to get competent. It's not about expertise and being an expert yet. Eventually it will be, but you have to be competent first. So talk to me a little bit about first that attitude of getting coached. Is there a certain attitude that we need so we can receive coaching in the best way, Michael?
It is a willingness. It's the growth mindset. If you want to pick on a label that's out there, which is like, are you up for this? Are you up for learning and growing and getting better at what you do? One of our bigger clients is Microsoft, and Satya Nadella, the CEO, he's pretty brilliant. He's like, we need to change Microsoft from a know-it-all culture to a learn-it-all culture. And, he's hooked into the growth mindset, and our kind of coaching approach is fueling the actual change in behavior and change in culture there. So whether you're asking the questions, being the coach, or being coached, so much of it is a commitment to let's make sure we're learning here, not just for the sake of learning, but just for the sake of getting better and smarter at the work we do. The other thing I want to say, Phil, is this. It's a mistake to think of the skills and the coaching habit book as just about you and your direct reports. Because here's what I really want. I don't want to turn your inside sales professionals into coaches, because most of them are like, I don't want to be a coach. I'm a salesperson. I love it. I love the hunt. I love the call. I love the chase. I love closing the deal. Coaching feels like this obligation, this HR thing that I have to do that just gets in the way of me doing what I want to do. And I'm like, okay, step back. Here's a definition. It's not about coaching. It's about being more coach-like. This, can you stay curious a little bit longer? Can you rush to action and advice giving a little bit more slowly? Curious longer, advice giving and action a little bit more slowly. And when you frame being more coach-like like that, every good sales professional is already nodding his or her head and going, oh, that's what I do in my sales conversations. Because, look, I don't know a whole lot about sales, but I know this. Most people start selling too soon. They're like, I've got a widget and I'm going to make you buy my widget no matter what. So whatever you just tell me, I'm going to just move into my sales pattern as fast as I can. The great salespeople that I've met, and I think this is backed up by the literature, go, look, if I can stay curious with my clients a little bit longer, if I can make sure that I really understand the challenge they're up against, when I do offer my solution, it is the right solution, and they are open to hearing the solution because of the nature of the conversation we've just had.
Yeah, I think that's so true. To your point, I coach and lead salespeople all day, right? I try to train them to be better. And right. The more we can focus on the questions and the insight that the client's going to give us, even more than we're going to give them, the more that we can actually solve a problem. And that's ultimately what we want. I mean, the bigger the problem, the more we get paid, right? The more value we add, because frankly, I mean, I got a paper cut. Well, I'm going to pay like nothing to solve that. I don't even care, right? I'm just going to put it in my mouth and I'm going to be okay with that. But if we're solving, a big Microsoft problem, holy cow, right? We're really going to get paid on that. And not just paid, but let's be clear, right? Salespeople also want to make an impact. And that's the big thing. That's the big difference that being curious gives us, is it gives us the opportunity to really say, so, and what next, right? And isn't that one of your questions? The awe question. What's about that?
In the Coaching Habit book, I'm like, okay, 7 good questions carry you a long way down the path. I mean, there are many more than 7 good questions, obviously, but in part of the writing and rewriting I went through to write that book, because I spent 4 years writing bad versions of the book before I finally got the good version. Part of the quest was to figure out, well, what are the questions to include? The first version of the book was like, it's 195 questions. And it was like, this is the worst book ever. It's just an overload of stuff. Getting it down to 7 questions meant I had to, curate, and that sort of, what stays, what goes. If it stays, it has to carry a load. And, I get asked all the time, so what's your favorite question? I'm like, well, I can't pick. But if I had to pick, and what else is probably the best question in the world, because it does 2 things. It tames your advice monster. That's the theme that runs through the Coaching Habit book and the new book, The Advice Trap, as well. It's like, for you to show up to be curious a little bit longer, you have to tame your advice monster, because most of us haven't. As soon as somebody starts talking, the advice monster looms up out of the dark and goes, oh, I'm going to add some value to this conversation right away. I'm going to start telling you stuff that you need to know. And what else does is it does 2 things. It tames your advice monster. It keeps you curious. It also helps you squeeze more value from any other question you ask, because people's first answer is never their only answer, and it's rarely their best answer. And if you think their first answer is it, you've been seduced and hoodwinked. Part of your job as a sales professional is to go, what else? What else is here? And what else is here? And what else is here? Because I promise you, there's always more than one thing.
Yeah. Well, there better be. And I think to that, I think and what else is a much less threatening question than so what or why, but that's really what we want to get at. And if we gently insert and what else is there, Michael? Tell me more about that, right? Help me understand more instead of, so why do you feel that way? Which puts people on the defense, right? I back up. I'm like, whoa, hold on. That's not what I want.
I honestly encourage people not to ask why. Now, look, I know Simon Sinek's work, so I know the power of why, and that's really powerful in that context. And I know the 5 whys ladder, so around getting to kind of root cause, and that can be really powerful in a certain context. But in an everyday context, as soon as you say why, you run into a few things. The first is it's really hard to ask why without it sounding a little bit like, why the hell? Why justify this and put people on the defensive, just as you're saying. The other thing that in the context of being more coach-like, which is when you're trying to help the other person get the insight, not just you, when you're asking why, you're often asking it for your sake. I want to know more background. And so as opposed to helping them go, we're trying to get to the heart of where you're going. So for me, I encourage people to use questions that start with the word what. What is that the most open space to be asking questions for? How is a good word to lead questions with, but it tends to be an action driving word. So you only want to get into the how once you know what problem you're really solving. And why, it's tricky to get it right. So if you can reframe your question so it's a what question, not a why question, you'll have a more engaged conversation.
Yeah, I agree. I think.
Hey, Phil, let me ask you a question,
if
I can. I'm curious to know, as somebody who spends his life working with inside sales professionals, what do you think gets in the way of people staying curious longer? Because everybody knows this in theory, and in practice, it's a struggle. So why is it so hard for sales professionals to keep that curiosity piece burning, do you think?
Boy, I think some of it is they feel that being a trusted advisor means like they have to have all the answers.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
So if I have to have the answer to every question, I need to be showing as quickly as I can that, and I think we couple that with the need to fill the airspace. If we've got a 50-minute conversation, seldom does a salesperson kind of put their body on mute and just really tune into the answer because they want to offer insight right away. That's your advice giving monster. I really see that, right? Because that's where we're trained. Oh, I'm the smartest guy in the room and I got to prove that. And I can tell you, until actually probably about a year and a half ago, I really struggled with that. Yeah. I struggled hard with that. I always thought, I got to prove that I'm worthy. And I realized it's more about proving that I'm curious and that I care than it is proving that I'm worthy. Is that make any sense?
I love that. And what I'm going to make a connection to is the neuroscience that proves the point. So if you're a sales professional, you want to have a conversation that is more rather than less engaged. You want the person leaning into the conversation rather than kind of backing away from it. And the basic neuroscience is this: 5 times a second, your client or your prospect is scanning this conversation with you, this engagement with you, and going, is it safe here or is it dangerous? Safe or dangerous? Risk or reward. Sorry about that. There are 4 drivers that help a person go, oh, this is safe or not safe. Tribe, expectation, rank, or autonomy. This is the neuroscience of engagement. And if you can increase those, any of those 4 drivers, tribe, expectation, rank, or autonomy, the conversation feels more valuable, more safer, more rewarding, and you're going to get a better conversation with person. Tribe, are you with me or are you against me? Expectation, do I know what's about to happen or do I not know? Rank, are you more or less important than me? And autonomy, am I getting to make some of the choices or are you making all the choices for me? And what's wonderful about the power of questioning is that you're actually able to say a question increases the terror quotient, T-E-R-A, the terror quotient. Not least, and this is the point I'm kind of circling back to, it's a brilliant way of making the other person the most important person in the room. You're raising their rank. You're increasing the sense of tribe. You're increasing their sense of autonomy by giving them space for their voice. If you have the confidence and the courage to raise the other person up, you win that conversation.
Wow. I love that. I think that's such a great reminder, especially, in sales, as folks think that they have to be the solution provider instead of being the person that helps the other person come to the solution themselves. I mean, I forget, maybe it was Phil Jones that says we're professional decision helpers, right? We're trying to help people make a decision that's in their best interest, not one that's in my best interest. Because frankly, customers don't care what I want. They care about what they want. And if we can help them see that this decision is in their best interest, not just because we say it is, but because they say it is, I think we have a much better chance of making a sale and developing a lifelong customer. Is that what you're seeing too, Michael?
Yeah, absolutely. And the framing I want to make sure that people hear is we're not saying here, never give the answer, never give the solution, never get to that point, because that would be ridiculous. Obviously, if you're just hoping that they're somehow going to get to the solution, that's a hard road to hoe. Remember the definition I had of being more coach-like. Can you stay curious a little bit longer? Can you rush to action and advice giving just a little bit more slowly? And the invitation here is to say, how long can you stay curious before you feel that need to go, let me start telling you stuff? Can you give it another minute? Can you give it another 3 minutes? Can you ask another 3 questions before you get there? You know, one of my early mentors gave me this great metaphor. She's like, okay, imagine a conversation is like swimming underwater. The longer you hold your breath, the more interesting a place it is that you finally pop up in the water. And I'm like, the longer you can hold back on your need to tell them the answer, the odds are the more interesting a place is you're going to pop up in that conversation. So there's a win for everybody in that, right? And the work needs to be done by you, the sales professional. It's self-management, because there's part of you screaming, going, I just want to tell them. I just want to add value. I see the solution. I would just want to give it to them. Or I've got the pressure of hitting my numbers, so I feel that pressure to kind of close the deal. And if I just tell them now, maybe I'll close that deal. And I'm like, maybe that's the right time to act. But gosh, what if you just asked another question? Because here's also what's brilliant. There's not that much at risk. If you ask another question and it's the wrong question, or they're like, I don't know why you're asking me another question, you're like, okay, you're right. That was a stupid thing for me to do. Let me just give you some ideas and some solutions here. So you run, there's not a whole lot of risk at experimenting with this, playing with curiosity, and you could win big with it.
Yeah. I really like that. I think that's important when we risk reward. If we're, that's the safety thing. If we're thinking in terms of safety, how can I make it more safe? Yeah. Well, by being curious and letting people really think about that. And I call it, shut the heck up, right? Like hit your internal mute button.
Exactly.
Let people come forth with their own answer, come to their own decision until they can't anymore. And then being helpful there. Oh, well, it sounds like you said, well, what about this, right?
It is a weird paradox that as a salesperson, you do all that work to master what you're selling, all that technical expertise, just so you can then shut up. But there's something about when you know your stuff, you actually have such a sound foundation that you're able in that place to go, from here, I can be curious because I've got the stuff. I know when the time comes, I'll be able to share the specs and share the price and share the upgrade and all of that sort of stuff, but just not yet. Just wait a little bit longer. It makes you different from the other salespeople that are out there as well. It changes the nature of your relationship. So it's like, I'm not just talking to Phil with that transactional, he's just trying to sell me stuff, but rather Phil is a trusted, and I love that you said this phrase, trusted advisor. I first heard that from David Maister way back when, like a long time ago. Yeah. And built into that phrase, that trusted advisor is that word advice, right? You're like, no, it's trusted advisor. You're there to give advice. But, part of one of the clients we work with is Gartner, the IT research firm. And, it's made billions based on its content. We're like, we've got analysts, we're here's the hype curve, we're doing all of that, and our reputation is in the content that we put out in the world. But the work we did with their key consultants, their executive partners, was to learn how to stop relying on content and advice and solutions. And here's why. They were paid on a kind of a rolling annual contract, and it meant that we had a key number, which was renewals. Every time a CIO renewed a contract, money flowed to the top and bottom line. And and as everybody knows, it's easier to sell to somebody who's already sold. So if you can get those renewals, everybody wins. They found overwhelmingly that training people to stay curious, and with curiosity comes relationship and an ability to say, let me help you solve this problem, rather than let me give you the answer to this problem. To reframe that role as my job is to help get to the heart of what's hard here, not to give you the fast, easy solution. Absolutely changed everything, increased retention by about 5 percentage points, which is worth, if not billions, then certainly multiple millions to Gartner. It changed the relationship.
Wow.
Here is like ability, change the nature of the relationships with the people with whom you work. So you're not a salesperson. You're not even a trusted advisor, but you're that partner that works with them to say, look, I'm going to help you figure this stuff out. I've got some great questions. And by the way, if your problem is something that my solutions work with, I'm going to tell you about that, obviously. But it's a relationship that can last, and everybody benefits from that.
Wow. That's outstanding. Definitely moving the needle on retention, 5 percentage points, not just 5 basis points, 5 percentage points. That's huge, man.
It was huge. I mean, honestly, there was a certain amount of fist pumping going on in the background here, where it's like, because when they brought us in at Box of Crayons, they were like, we just want people to have coaching skills. And I'm like, well, why? Because if you just frame all of this as coaching, you run the risk of it becoming, backed into the HR cul-de-sac, and nobody cares. And it's like, yeah, I care about my people and I'll coach if I can. But, I'm busy and I've got numbers to make, and, coaching, God, I've met coaches and they're all this weird touchy-feely people, or they're people who've been fired and therefore they're calling themselves executive coaches now. I don't want that. And I'm like, I don't want that. I don't want that for you either. I want to solve a business problem. So what's the business challenge that curiosity can help solve? And retention is one of those things.
Yeah, that absolutely is. Absolutely is. So Michael, is this going to take me like 3 hours a day in order to implement? I mean, you say less, ask more, and change the way you lead, but how long is this going to take me every day to actually implement this?
Oh, longer than 3 hours. It's an additional 8 hours work per day for everybody involved. No, I'm kidding.
Awesome.
So here's why busy people who listen to this podcast resist this whole idea of being more coach-like. The first is they go, look, I don't have time for this malarkey. I'm really busy. I am committed. I'm already working too many hours. I don't have time to add these long, rambling coaching conversations. And I'm like, no, you're right. If you can't coach in 10 minutes or less, you do not have time to coach. And then people come back and they go, well, Michael, that's delightful. And I still don't have time to coach, because even if I could coach in 10 minutes or less, my day is full. I don't have any capacity to add coaching to the work I'm already doing. And to that, I go, no, you're right. Again, this isn't about adding coaching to what you're doing. It's about transforming what you currently do to be more coach-like. Otherwise, we're just trying to pour water into a full glass, and that never works. So then people go, well, okay, but I don't want to be a coach. For all the reasons we've already talked about. I don't want you to be don't turn me into a coach. I'm a sales professional. I chose that path. I like the path. I don't want to be transformed into some weird thing that I don't even fully understand. I'm like, no, you don't want to be a coach. It's you in your role being more coach-like. It's a leadership behavior. It's not a new label. And then people go, well, fourth objection of 5. Well, what is coaching? And we've talked about that already on this podcast conversation, which is can you stay curious a little bit longer? Can you rush to action and advice giving a little bit more slowly? And then we get to the 5th and final objection that people often have, which is, all right, so you're making coaching less weird, and I like that. And it feels like it's a fast, doable, everyday, practical way of showing up that's going to help the people I lead, because they're going to get, and it circles right back to the start of the conversation, more confident and more competent and more self-sufficient and more autonomous and more creative. And who doesn't want that for the people that they lead? And you get why this is going to help your organization, because if you've got an organization with people who are coaching, you've got better retention of your people, you've got more focus in your teams, you're having more impact, that's great. But people then go, but what's in it for me? Why am I going to have to do the hard work to change my behavior? And what do I get out of this? And that's a good question. I would say this: if you add coaching or being more coach-like to your repertoire, you will get to work a little less hard and you'll have more impact. Because coaching, particularly this kind of curiosity-based, a few good questions, can really accelerate the conversation so that you're focused on the real things that matter. You're generating ideas that are actually useful. You're pushing the work down to the people who should be owning the work. So you're not doing their work for them, but they're doing it themselves. And you're having more impact in the work that you do. So if the idea of working a little less hard and having more impact in that work attracts you, then at least give this piece a try. Stay curious a little bit longer.
Wow. Well, to do that, don't we have to kind of tame our advice giving habit, right? Isn't that the key to that? Wouldn't we need to stay out of the advice trap a little bit, Michael, don't you think?
You totally do. It's a nice segue. This is the new book, just arrived on my desk the other day. So it's hot. Yeah, it's still hot off the press. I can smell the ink. It's fantastic. And I wrote The Advice Trap because, the Coaching Habits now sold 750,000 copies, which is, amazingly brilliant. I'm pretty stoked about that. And I get emails on a regular basis from people going, oh, this has changed everything for me. I saw the 7 questions. I practiced the 7 questions. It's now a way that I manage and lead and show up in life, and my life is better for it. And that's great. I'm thrilled for those people. But there's lots of people who've read the book and it's changed nothing. Okay. Even though they like the questions and they like the ideas, that shift of behavior to help them be more coach-like, to actually be curious a little bit longer, has proven to be really hard to pull off. So this book is all about how do we get to the advice giving? How do we get to the behavior change around this? What does it actually take to change people's behavior so that they get to really be more coach-like? And you're exactly right. This is like, all right, first of all, let's acknowledge that lots of us have that advice-giving habit. We just love to show up and ask questions. Show up and tell people what to do. But then I'm like, if you're finding it hard to shift that habit, how do you tame your advice monster? How do you tame your advice monster? And that's what this new book gets into. It talks about the 3 personas of the advice monster. There's 3. Tell it. It's like, the way I add value is I tell people what to do. I need to have the answer to everything and everybody all the time. There's save it, which is, I'm responsible for everybody. Nobody can fail on my watch. I have to take it all on. I'm responsible for making sure that nobody and nothing fails ever. And then the final one is controller. It's the slipperiest of the 3, which is like, I know that the only way I succeed is that I never lose control. I've always got my fingers in every pie. I've always bounded the situation. There's no kind of future coming in. I'm going to stay in control of everybody and everything all the time.
Wow. And
as soon as I put it like that, Phil, it was like, aren't all 3 of those impossible? I'm like, yes, they are. They're all impossible. And they're our reflexive behavior. We end up defaulting to one or more of these advice monsters. And the process of figuring out how do you calm them down, how do you tame them, is a big part of what this new book is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait to dive in. I've downloaded the workbook already. I'm excited about it. It's at theadvicetrap.com. Karen Clark says that she struggles with this. Absolutely. Me too, Karen. So this is great. Michael, we're going to have to come back and talk more about the advice trap because we love hard stops. So let's talk more. Folks, if you want to check Michael out more, you want to get more of Michael's great stuff, go order the advice trap. Go pick up the coaching habit. Go to boxofcrayons.com. That's right. Boxofcrayons.com. Get to know Michael Bungay Stanier. Michael, thanks so much for joining me today. I really loved our conversation, and I can't wait to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks everybody listening in as well.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.